All right, listeners, ready to dive into some pretty choppy waters today.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, we're looking at a potential trade war, brewing between the U.S. and Canada.
Oh, wow.
I knew this would be right up your alley, given your interest in economics and all things global.
Definitely. And I have to say that source title we're working with, shocking. Global panic.
A little dramatic.
Just a tad.
But don't worry, we'll sift through all the drama together and figure out what's really going on.
Sounds good.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really understand what's at stake,
Right.
why this should matter to you,
Of course.
and where this could all be headed.
Absolutely.
And to help us navigate these choppy waters,
Right.
we have an expert in international trade joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So to set the stage, the U.S. and Canada, they have pretty long history together, right?
Yeah, definitely not a sudden feud between strangers.
Not at all.
We're talking well over $800 billion in trade in 2023 alone.
Wow, $800 billion.
Yeah. To put that into perspective, the U.S. is Canada's largest export market.
Right.
And Canada is the top trading partner for the U.S.
So that's a lot more than just borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbor.
Way more. This represents millions of jobs, livelihoods, entire industries built around this cross-border flow of goods and services.
Okay, so huge implications.
Yeah, just to give you a concrete example, if tariffs on Canadian lumber were to increase significantly, it could mean thousands of lost jobs in British Columbia.
Oh, wow.
And on the flip side, much higher prices for home builders across the U.S.
So the stakes are high, but haven't we kind of been here before?
Yeah.
Didn't we see some tariff trouble back in 2018?
You're right, there were tariffs on steel and aluminum back then, and Canada retaliated strategically, targeting specific U.S. industries to apply pressure.
Interesting.
What we're seeing now has some echoes of that, but the current administration seems to be taking a more aggressive stance.
Okay, so then what exactly is driving this new wave of tension?
Right.
Why is the U.S. bringing out the tariff threats again?
Right. Well, the U.S. argues it's about addressing trade imbalances and protecting American industries. They're claiming unfair competition and are either imposing or threatening tariffs on a range of Canadian goods.
Like what?
From lumber to dairy.
Okay.
And it kind of fits into this broader trend of protectionist policies we've seen from the administration.
So that brings us to what our source is calling Canada's reprisal plot.
Right.
They're not just sitting back and taking.
Oh, absolutely not. They've got a plan, and it's carefully calculated.
Okay, so tell me more about this reprisal plot. What's Canada planning?
Well, what's interesting is they're not just slapping tariffs on any old thing.
Oh.
They're targeting specific goods like autos, orange juice, even bourbon.
Really, bourbon?
Yeah, and they're doing it for a reason.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Spill the beans. Yeah. What's the strategy behind these specific targets?
It's all about political pressure.
How so?
These goods are chosen to hit key industries in U.S. swing states, the ones that often decide elections.
Oh, I see.
Canada is basically trying to mobilize voters in those states to put pressure on their representatives and, in turn, on the administration.
So they're playing 4D chess, thinking several moves ahead.
Exactly. Canada's making it clear they're not going to back down easily, and they're willing to inflict some economic pain of their own to make their point.
Wow, this is getting interesting.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, stay tuned, listeners, because in the next part, we're going to dig even deeper into the potential consequences of this trade war and what it could mean for both countries and for you.
It's going to be fascinating to see how this all unfolds.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about how these political decisions can have a real impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. And to your point, this isn't just about, like, these big national economies. We're
Right.
talking about real people
Yeah.
in specific regions who might really feel the effects of this trade war.
Exactly. And our source highlights how the impact could really vary depending on where you are.
Yeah.
For example, border states like Michigan, New York,
Right.
Washington, they're so integrated with Canadian industries.
They are.
You know, they rely heavily on that cross-border trade.
Think about Michigan's auto industry.
Yeah.
They sent something like $23 billion worth of vehicles and parts to Canada last year.
Wow.
So if those retaliatory tariffs on autos and parts that Canada is considering were to go into effect, it could be really devastating for cities like Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Where so many jobs are tied to the auto sector.
It's like this chain reaction.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another, and suddenly
Exactly.
people are out of work, businesses are struggling.
That's the nature of a complex system like this, the global economy.
Right.
And it's not just manufacturing that could be addicted.
Oh, really?
Our source also mentions energy as a potential pressure point.
Oh, that's right, because Canada is a major supplier of oil and gas to the U.S.
Exactly.
So even if they don't, explicitly threaten to cut off those supplies, just the possibility could send shockwaves through the energy market.
Absolutely. Imagine a cold winter, natural gas pipelines slow down or stop oil shipments get delayed.
Oh, wow.
Prices would inevitably spike.
Yeah.
And we could even see shortages in some areas.
It's crazy how much leverage they have.
It really highlights how much leverage Canada has in this situation.
Yeah, it's like this high-stakes poker game, right, where each side is trying to anticipate the other's next move, but the chips represent people's lives and livelihoods.
Right?
So what exactly is Canada hoping to achieve here?
Well,
what's their end game?
At the most basic level, they want the U.S. to back down on these tariffs.
Okay.
They see them as unfair and a threat to their economic sovereignty, but it goes deeper than that.
Didn't our source also say that they were seeking support from international trade organizations?
Yes, they are. They're appealing to groups like the World Trade Organization, arguing that these U.S. tariffs violate existing trade agreements.
Oh, so it's a way of applying international pressure.
Exactly.
Got it.
Trying to rally global support for their position.
So they're playing this on multiple levels, domestically, internationally, economically, all at the same time.
Yes, and I think they're also aiming to set a precedent.
Oh, interesting.
They want to show the U.S. and the world that they're not going to be pushed around.
They're serious.
That they will defend their interests, even if it means some short-term economic pain.
So they're trying to redefine the relationship.
Yeah.
To be seen as more of an equal partner rather than just a convenient, resource provider.
That's a very insightful observation.
And it's not just about Canada, right? Mexico has also been targeted by U.S. tariffs in recent years.
They have been facing very similar challenges.
So do you think this shared experience could actually push Canada and Mexico closer together? Could we see them forming a stronger alliance?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Facing a common adversary can often create stronger bonds between nations.
I could see.
Canada and Mexico might see closer economic ties as a way to, reduce their dependence on the U.S., diversify their trading partners.
That would be a significant shift.
It would.
In the dynamics of North American trade, and I imagine it's not something the U.S. would welcome.
Probably not, but it's a scenario they might have to grapple with if they continue down this path of aggressive unilateral trade actions.
This is what's so captivating to me about this whole situation.
Yeah.
It's not just about the numbers, the dollars and cents. It's about national pride, political strategy.
Exactly.
And maybe even the reshaping of global trade alliances.
You've hit the nail on the head.
It all circles back to the idea that geopolitics isn't some abstract concept.
It's not.
Playing out in a distant boardroom. It's happening right here, right now.
It is.
And it has real implications for everyone.
For everyone.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
Oh, yeah.
From the initial sparks of this trade tension to potential economic fallout, strategic retaliation, and even the possibility of a reshuffling of North American trade relationship.
Right.
Out of all of this, what stands out to you as the most crucial takeaway for our listener?
I think the key thing to remember is that this trade dispute between Canada and the U.S. Isn't an isolated incident.
Okay.
It reflects this much larger shift in the global balance of power.
Interesting.
We're moving away from an era where the U.S. could dictate the terms of trade unilaterally. Countries like Canada and others are increasingly willing to assert their own interests and push back.
Even if it comes at a cost.
Even if it comes at a cost.
That's an important point, and it makes me wonder, if Canada is really prepared to play hardball on trade, could this embolden other countries to take a tougher stance against the U.S.?
It's certainly a possibility. If Canada successfully challenges U.S. trade policies, demonstrates their leverage, and withstands the pressure, it could signal to other nations that, standing up to the U.S. is a viable option. It could fundamentally reshape the landscape of global trade in ways we can't fully predict.
That's a pretty profound thought.
It is.
It makes this situation feel even more significant.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about a bilateral spat anymore.
No.
We're talking about the potential for a realignment of global trade.
Right.
A shift in the balance of power on the world stage.
Precisely. And it highlights the need for informed and nuanced discussions about trade
Yeah,
and its multifaceted implications.
for sure.
It's easy to get swept up in the rhetoric of protectionism and economic nationalism,
Mm.
but it's vital to remember that trade is this intricate, interconnected system with real consequences for people's lives.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here?
Right.
What should we be paying attention to as this situation unfolds?
We'll keep a close eye on the rhetoric coming from both governments.
Okay.
Are they digging in their heels and doubling down on their positions, or are there subtle hints of a willingness to negotiate?
Yeah, okay, good point.
What else? Look out for any announcements regarding new tariffs or retaliatory measures.
Okay.
Also, pay close attention to any developments at the World Trade Organization.
Right.
If Canada formally challenges U.S. tariffs there, it could potentially drag things out for months, if not years.
And what about the economic impacts? What are some early warning signs that this trade tension is starting to affect businesses and consumers?
One thing to watch for is announcements from companies
Okay,
about price increases or disruptions to their supply chains.
got it.
Also, pay attention to reports of job losses or factory closures, particularly in industries like manufacturing and agriculture that are sensitive to trade fluctuations.
Makes sense.
Keep an eye on consumer confidence indicators as well.
Okay.
If people start to feel uncertain about the economic outlook, it could have a ripple effect on spending and investment, further slowing down the economy.
So basically, we need to stay informed and brace ourselves for some potential turbulence ahead.
Yeah, this story is far from over.
It's far from over. But this situation also presents a valuable opportunity, I think,
Definitely.
to learn more about the complexities of trade, how it shapes our lives,
Right.
and how we can advocate for policies that promote fair and sustainable economic relationships.
Absolutely.
So why does all of this matter to you, our listener?
Right.
Why should you care about this potential trade war brewing between the U.S. and Canada?
Good question.
Well, for starters, it could hit your wallet if prices go up on everyday goods.
Yeah.
It could affect the availability of the products you rely on.
Mm-hmm.
And as we discussed earlier, it could even impact the pace of the green energy transition.
That's right.
If Canada decides to restrict exports of those critical minerals needed for things like electric vehicles
Right.
and renewable energy technologies,
It's a big deal.
this isn't just a political squabble happening in some far-off capital.
Yeah.
It has real-world implications that could be felt in your community, at your local grocery store,
Absolutely.
even at the gas pump.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected in this globalized economy.
Yeah.
And events happening thousands of miles away can have a tangible impact on our daily lives.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, but this is a dynamic situation that's still unfolding.
It is.
As you go about your day, here's something to consider.
Okay.
Could this trade tension actually accelerate a shift away from traditional North American trade alliances? What industries do you think are most vulnerable in this scenario?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but by engaging with these questions, we can become more informed citizens and participate in shaping a more just and sustainable future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the potential trade war between the U.S. and Canada.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep those critical thinking caps on,
Yes.
and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.